Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to see you here at 3:15 at the end of the day, after you've had maybe a food coma, maybe need a little pick-me-up, but hopefully this is going to be really fast, so hopefully you can stay awake for it. I, of course, as typical of me, have way too many slides. We're going to do kind of a general overview, but I promise at the end I will also give you some ideas as far as, specific apps or things that you can use. Before I forget, I don't want to neglect that one of the things that we offer here in Pennsylvania is, or one of the things that we have as part of Patent is a rich network of assistive technology specialists that are representing intermediate units and school districts. So please, I'm only one of many. Reach out to your team. This is always going to be a multidisciplinary process of problem solving. There are plenty of people in the schools that are looking at technology in different ways. And when I talk about assistive technology, first I want you to think about what's available. How we use technology determines whether it's assistive or just regular technology that we use as a universally designed tool. All right, I'm used to plugging and playing, and so doing this off of my computer, I wasn't quite prepared for this, so please forgive me. I'm going to tell you a brief story, and it leads to the question that's on the screen. We added on to the back of our house. It's very exciting. We had a deck that fell a couple of years ago, and we had to replace it with one with a roof, which is now called a porch. If you add a roof to a deck, it's a porch. Of course, I didn't know that at the time, but nonetheless, we have a bigger space, and we needed more furniture for this, right? So we had to fill it up. We bought 2 sets of furniture. One was an 8-chair dining set because we have 3 other couples that we get together with. Another is like a conversational set of furniture, which comes with a couch and 2 chairs and stools and whatnot. But they gave me an Allen wrench. The package at the bottom has an Allen wrench and the screws and the washers and nuts. 1 Allen wrench for all of that. I decided to optimize and use power tools. So that was great. It went faster. However, when it came down to those tight spaces, I still needed the Allen wrench. Part of me telling you this story is in real life, we're constantly thinking about the tools that meet the needs of the context in a given situation, but my question to you is, are we using the best tools for the task? Are we allowing our students to be engaging in things and optimizing their performance with tools that are available to them? Are we only giving them one choice, my Allen wrench? Are we giving them multiple tools to be able to be successful? So this is kind of a rhetorical question, but I do want some back and forth, and you guys are way, way back there. So I do want us to have a conversation. This is really more conversational than me just kind of talking at you. This is the space now. This is what it looks like. That's what I had to put together. Imagine how long it would have taken me with just the Allen wrench. So, by the way, down in the bottom, you'll see my dog. That's Percy. He loves this space. So my first question for all of you is, what is the purpose of education? And I would really like somebody to throw that out there. What is the purpose of education? Why are we here? Right? We're teachers. What are we doing with our students? All right, hopefully preparing them for life. And yeah, exactly, that's the second question, right? How are we preparing our students for life? What does that look like? Or are we, even functional skills include reading, writing, and math. How are we preparing them for life in post-secondary settings, whether it's independently living, working, going to school, all of the above? What does that look like? So again, I'm always a tool-oriented person. Doesn't matter if it's an Allen wrench or a power tool. Which one is the best one? As we look at our classrooms, we have diverse students represented. We have students with specific learning disabilities. We have students with speech and language impairments. Those are the 2 that are most represented in our high incidence. We also have other health impairments, students with ADHD or other, medical challenges or disabilities that they're allowed to be in general settings, but they still have the need for more support within the classroom. Then we have, other disorders represented, but in that, we also have multilingual learners that are represented in our classrooms. Sometimes those conditions coexist. We have students who are multilingual learners and have a disability. Or we also have students that might be doubly exceptional. They have really high IQs, but they have other disabilities that are represented that create a situation where they need intensified supports. I like visuals, so this is, and I love to go biking. I'm a big bike rider. So this is a cute representation of equality. Everybody gets the same bike, whether it actually works for them or not, versus equity, getting the bike that works for them. Here's another visualization for looking at the differences between equality, equity, liberation, allowing our students to be free, but then inclusion is where I challenge you. How are we including our students so they are actively in part of the instruction and the learning process? Here are some definitions where we're looking at the differences between equality, everybody getting the same thing, equity, getting the things that they need based on, or getting what the supports they need based on their needs. Access is providing the opportunity to have something, but that doesn't mean if we give students access that they have access to learning. So I will also have you be thinking more critically about when we say students have access, do they have access to learning or just access to the information? As we're looking at the differences, this might be access to technology. Giving a student an iPad doesn't mean that they know how to use it or use it effectively to leverage any challenges they might have in engaging in the instruction. They have access to information, but again, we have to make sure that we're looking at how our instructional practices align with the tools that are available to them. If I have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Versus if I have a full toolbox, then I can choose the tool that works best in any given situation. And then again, access to learning. This can just be, again, paired with good pedagogy and practice so that we're providing the tools available to them. When we have a lack of meaningful progress or a lack of meaningful engagement with the curriculum, it leads to learning loss, self-esteem issues. If I can't do it, it's really hard. And Johnny's doing way better than me, and I work as hard or if not harder. Behavior issues. I've seen students who have had subtle cues and nonverbal behaviors that indicated this was really hard for them. But we sometimes miss them because they're in a class of 25. How about the increased dropout rates? Again, it's really hard. Why do this? Every day I show up and it's impossible. And then overall poor student outcomes. So, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but how again are we optimizing using the tools that are available to us? Oops, sorry. So, I'm always asking every session, I'm that annoying person in the chat, what does the data tell you? Because we take lots of data. We take diagnostic data that help drive our implementation. We take formative and summative assessments that hopefully are informing our practices for what we're teaching our students in the classroom. But again, are we leveraging the technology tools available to us to help optimize their learning, but then also make things easier for us as educators so that we can focus on the content and unleash their learning, right? They are digital natives. How do we unleash their learning and allow them the flexibility to engage in content with tools that they're familiar with, but then we hone them back into engaging in activities that lead to the mastery of the core content standards or the curriculum standards that that our content is related to. And the other thing is, what are we measuring? What are we teaching and what are we measuring? And if we're not doing diagnostic assessment, again, there's no reason not to be optimizing with tools. The they're kind of far. If you're like way, way back, you're not going to see this. But the very top two graphs represent the learning profiles of a couple of students that, I'm hypothetical, I don't have actual data, but they've received some sort of intervention, maybe tier 1 supports, and you'll notice the very first one, there's a faster profile of learning. They were able to receive that support and learn faster than student number 2 on the other side. Progress was a little bit slower. Same intervention, but 2 different ways of them mastering whatever the content was. And then in the lower, we have some students that at different points in the timeline were providing additional supports, but they're not meeting the standards. They're not learning the content, and they're demonstrating that they need more. How do we do that? We have tools available, are the education technology. I don't know if you knew this, some of us. Anybody who's been around me knows that I did some research. There was a 43% increase in the purchase of technology for students during the pandemic. Shocker, right? We had to have one-to-one technology in order for them to engage in the curriculum. That launched us into a situation where most to all students have the tools available to them, and the tools that were purchased are universally designed in a way that assistive technology features are built in. So all students now have access to the tools that allow them to have text read to them, to dictate if that is a preferred method. I mean, how many of you dictate to Siri to send a text? I mean, I do it all the time. Because sometimes it's just faster, right, than typing with my thumbs. My kids are way faster at typing with their thumbs than I am, but I can absolutely have Siri help out with that dictation portion. I also ask her to, Siri and Alexa, to do various tasks. They are my digital assistants to help me streamline what I'm doing because I'm washing the dishes or driving. Not that you should be driving and dictating at the same time. And then we've got the information technologies. It's really the backbone of it's the hardware and the wires and the things that allow us to access the education. And then assistive technology, again, what I had mentioned earlier is that we'll talk about the definition later. Assistive technology is what allows students to do something that they otherwise could not, using that, whatever that is. The benefits of assistive technology, it bridges the gap for some of our students. I don't know how many of you guys went to Dave Eddyburns' session today? No. So he's a researcher that I've been following for a very long time. He has looked at UDL, but not in a hardcore UDL sort of way. We're looking at instructional design. We're looking at how are we front-loading so that our instruction within the educational environment is accessible to more students than if we were looking at one way of engagement. He also looks at assistive technology. The reason why I bring him up is if you do a search for him and find his YouTube video, he talks about the fiscal conservancy of providing universal tools in a way that if we provide those universal tools, the students are able to engage in the content more independently and don't need as much intensive instruction as soon as had they not had that available to them. There's also, within the secondary environment, it improves educational attainment and improves life outcomes. If we're teaching our students to use the tools today that will allow them to understand the tools of tomorrow, we're giving them a head start on who they become, how much money they make, whether they're employable or not, if they're able to go to college or not. There have been tons of studies that have indicated that some of our high incidence students, given assistive technology, allows them to have better outcomes because they are employable. They are able to, back in the day, every Christmas I would hear the plug for Dragon Naturally Speaking, but that's something that we use all the time. It's not just for people with disabilities. It's built into our stuff. When we're considering assistive technology, it doesn't matter what framework we're looking at, it is ubiquitous at this point. It can be within UDL. It provides the flexibility for helping our students engage because we can change the product based on what we're doing. It can be a substitute for paper and pencil. We can have, instead of paper and pencil, we can type it, we can dictate it, we can pull in visuals. There's a lot of different things that we can do that allow students to demonstrate their comprehension, learning, and provide the data we need to prove that they've demonstrated growth and progress towards our assessment measures. Then within MTSS and RTI, as we're considering all of the supports, again, if students have access to the academic content while they're receiving intensified supports, either at the Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 level, they're still engaging in the content that allows them to be in the least restrictive environment. They're learning the academic vocabulary that allows them to be familiar and engage in conversations with their peers, as well as, of course, have classroom discussions. Legally speaking, we have two sets of laws. We all know about IDEA. You're required to provide a free and appropriate public education, but within 504, we're also, because schools receive federal funding, we're required to provide equal access and accommodations that allow students to engage at the same or similar ways as their peers. But the questions are, these are kind of rhetorical, and you guys seem like a quiet group. But some things to think about is, what does it look like when they're struggling? How do we know? Do we wait for the data? Have we got the data already? What does the data tell us? We see it. There was a student that, this is a speech and language example, but I promise you it's relevant. I was watching somebody giving speech therapy. For a while I was a clinical instructor, and the speech therapist, young, lovely, super cute, was providing therapy to a young man who was struggling with his language comprehension, and she's hammering him with all these questions, and I'm just watching him sit there, start to roll his shoulders, and I'm watching his hand disappear into his sweatshirt, right? That was a not so subtle cue to her that this is really hard. Then she starts providing prompts and cues to help him understand the expectations and engage more fully in what she was doing, and all of a sudden his hand reemerges. Magic, right? No. It was being responsive to, what does he need? What are the cues that we're seeing? What is the data that we have available to us? So there's also, certain criteria for eligibility that, in the end, we're looking at how are we looking at not just terms, but the supports needed to help our students thrive. In special education, it's designed to accelerate learning. If we're accelerating learning and optimizing performance, whether it's in Tier 1 of MTSS or special education, isn't that our goal? We want our students to thrive and succeed in post-secondary settings. That is our Disney World, if you will. There are different paths to get there. Some are faster. I-95 is faster, it just costs more. Then there are other detours where some of our students are taking the detours because it takes a moment to get that background knowledge in order to really understand and further practice the concepts and skills to get to their destination of the land of learning or Disney World, what have you. And then as we're thinking about this in the classrooms, here we are, we're talking about MTSS practices. How are we providing those supports? We're talking about behavior. What does that look like in the classroom? So the last question is, are we teaching resilience, independence, dependence rather, or failure? How much failure data is needed before we provide support? So that's just kind of the framework that I think about. How do we constantly allow our students to be independent, provide just the right supports for them to, again, accelerate their learning. Are you guys going to answer a question? Can I get this out of you guys? So what tools do you use to optimize performance and close the gaps? It could be anything. within your classroom, within your like school? What are some of the like generalized tools? Marissa has a suggestion. Thank you for being my person.
I use speech to text and text to speech for my students' one-to-one devices.
That is brilliant. Oh, I have a story. Okay, so one of the things I didn't tell you is I am intimately aware of providing supports as a professional, but also as a parent. I have 2 students that needed 504s, one of which ended up with an IEP because he just needed that intensified support. One day during the pandemic, after like asking my daughter which tools she would like to use because she had an assistive technology specialist at the table every single meeting, she of course wasn't ready for that. And that's okay. We have to constantly expose them until they're ready. She had been exposed all the time, so keep that in mind. She had reading difficulties either because of ADHD or, at my at-home speech lab, I can't actually diagnose my own child, but I had been doing speech and language assessments to look at her ability to understand language, decoding, phonemic awareness, without going to the paying for the assessment. Ultimately, she has dyslexia. She doesn't have a formal diagnosis. So with that, we received reading supports in elementary school, all through middle school. We finally got to a point where she was just at basic for all of the standardized tests that allowed her to start taking academic specials, because that was her special. She took reading class instead. How many of our students have to do that? They're not doing the fun stuff because they're getting extra support that allows them to be still in the same age classes. So anyway, all that to say, when we got to high school and she had a one-to-one device and the textbooks were all online and they were offering text-to-speech, they were essentially ebooks, she comes to me one day, proud mom moment, AT mom, and she says, "Hey, have you heard of this app called Speechify?" Have you guys heard of Speechify? Right? For a while, it provided a lot more features than it does now. Now, he wants to make more money, of course. It was created by a student who has dyslexia for students who have dyslexia. So she wanted to try it out because she could identify with that. What she did with it, though, as Marissa pointed out, like text-to-speech versus speech recognition or speech to text, is that in her world, she was a successful student, but she needed additional supports. She would use Speechify to read her textbook and her reading assignments to her, and she would take notes. So that was kind of app smashing for her. So she was using a Word document to take notes and capture the information while she had the information read to her, because print was much slower for her as a means for accessing information. That's just like one of many examples. I have lots of students that do app smashing, and they have to figure out what's best for them. Our job is to kind of be like, here's the goal, here's what we need to do. Figure out how to do it, but here are some suggestions. Because sometimes it takes time. She was a junior in high school, and again, sitting at the table every time with an assistive technology specialist. So this is my way to be funny. What the tech? There's education technology. Again, this is the strategy of engaging with our technology that aids instruction and learning. We also have the information technology, assistive technology. The formal definition is any item, piece of equipment, or product system that is used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of a child with a disability. So really, it's even, I don't have my phone on me, the phone with the rubber, like the phone case with the rubber, if it allows you to touch the screen without moving the phone, that could be assistive technology if the student has physical impairments and has trouble with accessing and pushing too hard and can't grade their movements. It could be as high-tech as our iPads. And then inclusive technology is accessible technologies universally designed in a way that they can be used with or without additional assistive technology components. Some of our students use iPads that if they have physical impairments, some of our students have physical impairments and are in general education classrooms, right? They might have spina bifida or cerebral palsy, but educationally they're in the gen ed classrooms matriculating with peers who do not have disabilities, and they might need some sort of access tool such as switches, sip and puff. Apple has an amazing bunch of videos that provides ideas for how assistive technology works within the products and tools that they offer. Again, here are the technologies used in schools. The strategies that might be part of education technology is providing a learning experience to enhance or support students' progress in the curriculum. When we're looking at productivity or information technology, this might be for consuming and organizing information or producing content. So this is just kind of like how are we getting them to demonstrate what they know. And then assistive technology, again, just providing the supports for students who may not otherwise be able to engage in that. I am going to kind of gloss over this. There are different ways that assistive technology can be represented with text-to-speech, readability, focus. For our students with ADHD, you can streamline the websites using an extension, a Chrome extension, so that it simplifies the screen so that you can pay attention. How about those ads that, like, I can't even read some of the pages when there's too many ads that pop up? Like, I can't. I don't know if you guys can, like, tune that out. It's hard for me, let alone, like, anybody who has attentional difficulties anyway. And then translators. For our students who are multilingual learners, this is a game changer because it allows them to hear the English language of instruction or the language of instruction, depending on where they're attending school, but then they can translate it into their dominant language and go back and forth. And it allows them the opportunity to understand what's being said. How many times have we, I've been to other countries where I needed that translation so that I understood what was happening, what I was expected to do. I just don't want to run over time. So that I relied on that in a way so that I could actively be wherever I was at. Then there's live captioning, as demonstrated on screen right here. Summarizing and composing, those are all tools. So again, it can be represented a variety of different ways. It does represent a range, like I was saying. It could be no tech. It could be strategies that we're using and implementing in a way that we're modifying or accommodating our students with just the strategies. Low tech could be anything that doesn't actually require like digital technology, or it's just something that is created using some sort of digital technology. And then we've got our high tech. I feel like a lot of times because the word technology is in assistive technology, everybody kind of thinks digital technology over other means. As we're thinking about, this isn't new information, it's just something that's being highlighted, right? When we're thinking about how our students engage, there are students and professionals who are doing novice versus context dependent. They might be transitional users where they're a little bit more mastery. How many people are like great at typing into Word documents, but they're not as proficient at like all of the tabbing? I have a husband who's an editor, and so I might be a little bit more proficient than the next person with my ability to play around with that, or even Excel spreadsheets. Mastery depends on practice. This in particular, I wanted to just kind of demonstrate the various ways that a tablet could be represented as either a universal tool plus the learning support, or as an assistive technology. So what it does, again, as any piece of equipment, it can represent all of this. It can be the universal supports that are provided within testing that all students have access to, or it can be an accommodation that's needed for the students who just need something to, again, give them access to the curriculum content, versus the assistive technologies that truly need to simplify and modify in a way that allows them to engage completely. It's tiny. Hopefully you guys got the QR code. I'll do that again at the end. It also provides supports within inclusionary practices so that we're allowing more students to engage in the curriculum, right? Because it through a UDL lens provides that flexibility. It creates opportunities for students with varying abilities to go at their own rate, to use the tools that they need, and to, again, how are we helping them optimize? This is kind of a funny little, so the bell curve is really our technology acceptance. There are certain people who are immediate adopters, and there are some that are a little bit more reticent at the far end. It's kind of a funny thing to, just a funny visual. But the thing that I want you to think about is, as we're providing education technology, is it really accessible to our students with disabilities? What's nice about it, though, is it's a great starting place. Because if you have text-to-speech and you don't have students with visual impairments or print disabilities yet, you're prepared for when they do enter your door. It starts that, it provides a way for them to enter quickly, and you're not scrambling at the last minute thinking, oh my gosh, how do I get, in that case, a teacher of the visually impaired to modify everything. The thing that I hear frequently, though, is that we've been doing certain things a certain way, and because of my interest in technology, I, of course, immediately think about how can I quickly modify this assignment to engage all these different types of learners. That's not always the framework, and so in that way, we have to be working together with how do we make it more engaging, make it more accessible, provide the instruction that's paired with that in a way that allows us to reach all learners, every single one of them, and optimize the activity or the task. Again, we're looking at how do we mitigate the barriers to learning and accelerate it. It should be, and I will always say this, from the day that I got my AT certificate, it was drilled into me. AT is not a substitute for good teaching. It's just a tool in your tool belt. Accessibility features that we use daily are not being leveraged enough. And I think that's really kind of at the heart and the challenge. And I think if you're here, you probably are, I'm probably speaking to the choir, right? You guys are all on board. You're like, I could get up here and teach, Tammy. There are, like I said, different frameworks, and technology can be represented in all of them. UDL, of course, is looking at how are we making our curriculum more flexible, but the end goal is for our students to become expert learners. Because really, at the heart of becoming an expert learner is being able to self-advocate in other settings. They're learning how to be a learner and how to ask for more and what they need. Then we, of course, have MTSS. We're addressing the supports that they need based on the proficiency that they demonstrate. Direct instruction, of course, is how we are, differentiated instruction is how we're looking at the different needs and intensifying the delivery according to those needs. And then, of course, we've got specially designed instruction, also known as special education. So here's something that, that's provided by the University of Florida. It's just a conceptual framework that kind of represents, or a visualization of, UDL happens from tier one to tier 3, and in special education. It's not something that's unique to any one setting. Technology is also a part of that. Technology is represented, again, from education to educational technology to assistive technology. Oh, sorry, and as I'm moving, it's making noises. What that looks like, for example, in an MTSS framework, universal reading might be the built-in supports that would be for magnifying things if the students have, maybe they forgot their glasses and they want to blow up, magnify something that's on their worksheet. They can do that and write at the same time. That's beautiful when you have an iPad or some sort of tablet with a camera. We've got text-to-speech. We talked about that earlier. We've got highlighting to help us organize the information in a way, again, a strategy that we teach. Text leveling to help with AI in particular. Have you ever played around with AI? Dave Eddyburn was pointing out you can ask AI for 11th grade content, and then for our more concrete learners, we can ask for content that is at 2nd grade level. So that's one way that you can be using AI as an instructional tool. Then if we're looking at targeted reading supports, then you might look at the more robust features and how you can provide those as accommodations or targeted supports. And then with the individualized reading supports, you have to decide if the tools available in the instructional technology being provided is sufficient, or if they need a more robust app or software tool. Here's just an example. We're focusing on Tier 1 within this session, but this is something that you can dive into a little bit later. For this example, if it were more student-specific, then you would look at the reading delays that a student with reading delays struggling to access text. The teacher might recommend, this is a specific app, it doesn't have to be anyone. But Read and Write is an extension that's available through Chrome, and you can have them tap in. Again, universal support, it's already there. Try it before you buy it. We're test driving tools to see what happens. When we're recognizing and reducing barriers, it might be looking at physical, the media format, the systemic barriers. Sometimes we have barriers related to processes that take more time, that allow us to be less flexible with providing the supports in a more immediate manner. And then perception. We always need to be checking, like, again, we're in a situation where I think I'm pretty much assuming I'm speaking to the choir. Our perception is we need to be supporting our students, but looking at the data to help us drive implementation. UDL is one of the many frameworks that I discussed earlier. And then here's how technology might be represented again. It's crucial for UDL enabling a broader student engagement in general education. You can do so much with it, and I'll talk a little bit more about another acronym that would help with that. The integration of technology benefits all students, right? Doesn't matter what their ability is. They can speed up, slow down, they can listen to text, they can read it. It just provides a lot more flexibility for our students in general. Here's what that might look like within the tiers with the use of assistive technology by students with disabilities. And again, bringing it back to what our legal requirements are is if they have a disability, whether it's a 504 plan or IEP, these are things that we need to be discussing in order to decide the difference between a universal support and assistive technology. I will say that in doing the data and reaching out to others, it seems nebulous. Everybody knows what assistive technology is supposed to be, but there is a huge difference between the students who can access the tools and supports without the need for intensive instruction or specially designed instruction, and those who have an obvious need for assistive technology. There are students who have the high incidence disabilities that we're providing a lot of instruction to without thinking about the tools that are available. And far too often I have teams asking me, well, if it's a universal support, do I have to write it in the IEP? Yes, thank you. My AT people in the back are nodding yes. Because if you think about it, if they go to another school and that's not the universal support, they now can't engage in the instruction. They are no longer going to be benefiting from their least restrictive environment. They are now in, I don't know, Tahiti. It's a magical place, but not if you don't have the tools you need to be successful. I'm an Adventures fan. Here's another way of looking at integrating technology from general education learning goals plus, universal design for learning. It's just an instructional design, right? We're looking at ways that we can provide multiple ways of students to engage in what we're doing, and designing with more flexible options, with sticking with the goal of the activity and what we're assessing in mind. And then going to the accommodations and modifications, where we're looking at the goal, the environment, the instruction, and the materials. So when we're optimizing, unfortunately, with you guys way back in the screen, so teeny tiny, I'll go through this. So things to consider, I've talked about this over and over again. What is available in your classrooms? If students have one-to-one technology, what are the things that they can be tapping into while you're doing it? What's already been tried for our students who maybe need more of those, more of the supports that allow them to, again, choose between whether they read the text or they listen to it out loud. Earlier, I was reminded that we have some speed listeners. I don't know if you know that. My student, or my student, in college has turned into a speed listener because speeding up the rate of text-to-speech allows her to take the content in much faster, and it doesn't affect her comprehension at all. So she's listening very quickly. My friends and students who have visual impairments, also speed listeners, because they're not waiting for the word by word, highlighting for what they read and take in. It's amazing. Try it on your phone, I challenge you. And then the other factor is the social acceptability or validity of whatever the tool is. Is it not stigmatizing? Does it allow them to blend in? Some students really are embarrassed and they're not going to use assistive technology, no way. There have been many of my students, including one in my own home, that the computer in the back of the room was not going to be used. He was producing my son, as well as many of the students that I worked with, were able to verbally tell you whatever the information needed to be. However, they were producing 3 or 4 sentences while their classmates were writing full-page essays that were beautiful, and that's definitely a discrepancy, right? We're not optimizing in a way that we're allowing our students to engage in this. Now, dictation seems like the answer, but while we're putting the information on there, we're also looking at organization, the grammar. So this also allows us to provide opportunities to our students to practice getting that information out, refining it in a way that still follows the conventions of the written product. We just need to reframe our teaching and redesign what we're doing. And then the other thing is, what works? We have a question. Hold on. Nicole, here, I'll unclip here. No.
So those students who are in the back and they're never going to use the computer and they're writing 3 sentences, what are you doing?
So it really kind of depends on the student. They are at the heart of this. What are they going to do? What are they going to be motivated to do? In the case of some of my students, we had to consider things that were a little bit more portable, get those unique solutions for students who had IEPs. But again, the thing that leveled things was during the pandemic, everybody getting their tools. Because now everybody blends in. It doesn't matter that I'm using text-to-speech. It doesn't matter that I'm using rate enhancement. It doesn't matter that I'm doing all these things. I am allowed to now do this on my same tool as everybody else, and everybody now can use the tools that they need. So if I needed to use text-to-speech, if I needed to type it in, my son, absolutely. The other thing he had to do was he had, he's not the only one, but he's such a great example because I lived with him and had to painfully go through this. But he was also the student that he did not receive occupational therapy services, but when he wrote with a pencil, he broke the tip. So a modification for him was, you know, this foam, like, I don't know, not foam boards, but like the thing, like at the craft store, you can get those like foam sheets. We had to put those under his piece of paper so that he wouldn't break the tips, and taught him to write a little softer. That didn't necessarily work. So it was like a trial and error situation. Eventually, we had to compromise, and pens were fine. Pens he couldn't break the tips off of, not without making a mess, and he never did. But it was also, in his case, the foam could have been assistive technology. It allowed him to do what he couldn't do before. The pen, again, an accommodation. He's still producing things, but it's still not the same level of production. When he typed things, here was the interesting thing. He would type for a long period of time and spend more time engaging in producing that same level of content that his peers would produce, but he typed it. And sometimes we had to bring that home. Our accommodation was he brought his homework home. I did not help him. I set him in front of a computer. He didn't have to stand out from his peers. He just got to turn everything in the next day. So that was an accommodation that we made with our teacher, but I'm not kidding when I say there are more students that are now engaged in their curriculum and able to type things in. He in particular, because their district actually had been rolling out technology prior to the pandemic, and so it was just a catch up with just a few students. But once he hit high school, again, he blended in, he was typing, other kids were writing with their pencils. He hated writing even just one word, but at the same time, one word with a pencil was more practical in that given situation than to pull out your iPad and use SnapType to snap the worksheet and then fill it in and type in the answer. So there was that option. He did try it. Ultimately, in the end, he did go back to using pencils for short answers, but providing the volume, he needed that assistive technology. And then advocacy. Throughout the whole process, we want our students to be figuring out, becoming expert learners, determining the best tool that optimizes a task for them. Unleashing their learning, allowing them, like giving them the scaffold. The one thing that I do really like about UDL is it allows them to say, this is the goal, this is what I'm looking for. You have to flexibly decide how you meet this goal. Here's the criteria. Kids are amazing. They can figure this out, especially if we start early. All right, so for those of you not familiar, the SET framework is a way to be pulling this information together. A lot of the special ed, if you're not, how many people are special ed folks? Okay, how many people are gen ed folks? Okay, so may one gen ed person be with your special ed friends. And it's just looking at what can the students do. This is our present levels of performance. This is instructionally, where's their baseline, the environment, what are the things that are happening, what are they expected to do. The tasks are a little bit more specific to what they're doing, but I'm also looking at what the other peers are also doing at the same time. And then the tools, it could be what's available as a starting point. Are you guys going to answer questions? Sure. All right. In what ways is technology being used in your area, classroom, to mitigate barriers? Because you guys have all the answers. I'm only one.
Hi, I'm a parent speaking about my 16-year-old. So you mentioned how your son is a fast typer. My son types 9 words a minute at 16. So what helps him is predictive text.
Yeah, so we can turn on the grammar prediction and whatnot. There is, for some students, if AJ is not a fast typer, by the way, but he can spend lots of time typing.
My son also can't focus.
Yeah, but again, we all learn at our own rate, and it's based on motivation. If it's 9 words a minute, then you want to look at rate enhancement. And so that would be part of that. However, there is a certain amount of, if the goal is looking at grammar structures, that can be part of everything else until they're trying to really tease out and take assessment on grammar. So I would caution you, again, like it comes back to what's the data, what's the task, and what's the data you need to collect for determining, not just the baseline, but measuring progress for that intensive instruction that hopefully he's receiving. There's always that feature. Do you know, while I'm talking about testing, did you know the statewide testing, they have an ability to turn on the embedded features or not provide them? It depends on what you ask for. They also have a ton of data that is available to us, but I'm always wondering, like, what are we doing with this data? What does that look like? How are we informing instruction using the data that we're collecting? Poor is one model that you can be looking at representation. Is the activity perceivable? This might be in different ways of representing it. How can they see it, hear it, engage with it? Is it operable? Are they able to navigate the information in an easy and predictable way? If it's something that they have to jump around, that makes the task all the more complex. Is it understandable in a way that allows them to understand through consistent and predictable designs? And then the last one is robust. Can it be represented on different devices? Can you, like, what I love about being a Mac user, I also use PCs. I'm a bilingual digital technology person. At work, I use PCs, not my favorite. But what I love about engaging in websites and on my Mac is it's pretty much you pick it up and it's accessible across devices. So how are we making sure that it's offered in a widely available format? SAMR is another model that I like. I learned about it. Oh, sorry, go ahead. She has yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I was just curious, on your slides, we're talking about all these different devices, technology. What is your thought or the research showing about cell phone usage as part of this conversation? I know school districts have different policies on cell phone usage, but it's, we use it every day. Our students are using it every day. I just didn't know if that's something that you've looked at.
There's varying levels. It's another tool, right? It's just this comes with a data plan. So if you're blocked from using your data plan through the school Wi-Fi, you're limited in access. But if you think about it, technology has become so ubiquitous. It's on our wrists, on our phones. We've got iPads, we've got laptops. It's everywhere. We can't escape it. And I think it at the heart of your question is if a student has access to their phone and that's the tool that they want to use, then we need to ask ourselves, what is it being used for? If they're texting somebody else, maybe that's not a good use of their time, but that's another conversation. But if they're texting and sending the text to you because they were able to type it faster with their thumbs or dictate it with voice dictation, and they send it to you, then could it be that the text serves as a substitute for the paper and pencil version or the Word document or whatever needs to be demonstrated through written formats, right? So.
They also use it as my students use it as they take a picture, they don't want to wear their glasses.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on taking pictures because now, so yes, if you take a picture with your phone, it now has OCR capabilities. I can take a picture with my phone. If I have Google Lens up, it will not only do a search for whatever it is. The funnest, I challenge you, the next party trick that you do, if you have a phone with Google Lens or like the Google app, take a picture of something and be like, do you know what kind of flower that is? So I, of course, have done this at many parties or wedding events, and it not only looks it up, it tells you all about it. You can even refine the search to be even more relatable. If you, on the Apple iPhone, if you take a picture, it will also provide the text, it will read it out loud. There's so many things we can do with our phones. Are we allowing that to be one of the tools in our students' tool belts? So I think that's a great point/question. Yeah, we have a lot of power in our pockets. We're almost out of time. I do have examples, but I do want to highlight, I also want to highlight before we stop, there are ways to look at, SAMR is a model for just how we might redesign our activities. What I like about it is it points out that sometimes technology can be a direct substitute. That's what happened during the pandemic. People who went back to paper and pencil were just substituting, right? That was kind of the default. Then we had augmentation. They were providing those videos. They were offering more ways of engaging in the content for increasing understanding. Then we had the modification where we redesigned it in a way that we're still tapping into the goals that we're expected to achieve related to core content standards, but allowing them to represent that or demonstrate their understanding and mastery of it in a different way. And then redefinition, like just, if you can do it with a video using story, like a three-part story map versus writing out an essay, is that demonstrating the same concepts, just two different ways of production, two different products. And then I like it because I'm a coffee drinker. So it's just thinking about, is it a regular cup of coffee, a latte, a caramel macchiato, or a pumpkin spice latte, right? That's how, here are some examples that you might look at within the IEP. If you go back to the handout, it just kind of gives you an idea of, if you're looking at word processing, then you might allow, as an accommodation, allowing the students to use an iPad for keyboard classwork and writing assignments. I just like that it was a nice side-by-side as a resource for you guys. This is at the heart of everything you should be asking yourself. What's the goal of the activity? And how are you measuring growth? There are tons of curriculum-based measurements that are built into what we're doing. I did provide just some ideas of how you might embrace inclusivity with Universal Design for Learning, leveraging accessible learning platforms like, using Quizlet or StoryMac.js. Try that out. It's actually kind of cool. Tapping into text-to-speech or speech to text and text-to-speech tools. They can be used in combination where you're dictating into one and then listening to it to see if it says what you think it says. Did you capture everything? Is it really what you meant to say? Encouraging collaboration on online spaces. There's, like the blogs and Google Classroom and Slack and Kylo. How are students engaging and talking about these tools while they're not in the class? Providing options for expression through multimedia projects, which is kind of what I was alluding to with like redefining our activities. It might be Flipgrid, Canva, Powtoon is, get the free teacher version. Using Audacity, again, Canva. Canva is like a very powerful tool at this point. This I wanted to highlight. Did you know that there are free literacy tools built into your Word Office suite? Microsoft Learning accelerating free literacy tools to support. There's ways for the students to be demonstrating reading fluency, practicing the words that they're missing, taking a quiz on it. It's got the data all built in. Do check that out. And then here are the practices for integrating technology where there's shared leadership and planning, making sure that there's robust professional development within the schools or your own, right? Seek it out. There's tons of stuff free for Google, Microsoft, Apple, on the web, YouTube, building fidelity of practices as well as engaging in data-informed decisions. So here's a couple of tools that you can look for the research behind some of the features. This, if you want to go crazy with technology integration, there's a matrix for helping you tease that out. These were a couple of newsletters that we produced through the Assistive Technology initiative. One is the back to school. It's a little bit more ed techy, and so actually your examples were pulled from the back to school edition. And then for students who have more complex needs, the AAC awareness, I did provide examples of ways that you can use strategies within Tier 1 classrooms of support that allow AAC users to be engaged and still be participating with peers who do not need that level of support. And then my challenge to you, if you can't beat them, how can we empower students and unleash learning with the tools that they are already familiar with, like the iPhone or their digital, like whatever phone they have. And then we're out of time. I'm happy to stay for questions, but otherwise, thank you so much for listening at 3:15 to 4:15.
Thank you again, Tammy.